Hi, this is Brian with ActiveMelody.com. Well, this week's guitar lesson is all about controlling our fingers so they don't bump unwanted strings. That's a tough thing to do, so I wanted to write a really simple little melodic composition that sounds good on its own, so you'll have this standalone composition that you can play for other people on an acoustic or electric guitar. But there's a lot of space in it, a lot of open space, so that can be more difficult than you think when you're trying to not bump strings and just try and focus on a very simple melody with a lot of open space like that. So we're going to break this down over the course of 2 videos. In this video, we'll take a look at the first half. If you'd like to watch the second half and download the tablature for this and access the on-screen tab viewer, which allows you to slow down sections and loop them and all of that, you can get those things by going to ActiveMelody.com, go to the weekly lessons page, and do a search for EP302. Alright, so let me just start off by mentioning the tone settings that I'm using. Now normally I'll just plug straight into an amp and play that way. I'm kind of old school when it comes to that. I don't like to get lost with all the complexity of pedals and that. But I do like a little tremolo every now and then. And so you can hear that kind of wave in the sound, which is a really cool effect, and it's something that's fairly old school. It's an effect that's been around for a long time. And so I'm playing through a Kemper Profiler, which has a built-in tremolo effect, but you can get that effect with a pedal. If you like that sound, there's a lot of different brands of tremolo pedals. There's 2 that I've used. One is Voodoo Lab Tremolo. That's a great one. And then there's the Trelicopter is what it's called. It's one of those real small pedals made by Moore, M-O-O-E-R. And I've used both of those, and they're both awesome. So basically what you're doing is you're controlling the depth of that waveform and then the speed of it. Those are the two main parameters that you control with tremolo. So you just have to kind of dial it in. I don't like a lot of depth in mine. I just like it to be sort of subtle. The other effect I'm using is the reverb effect, and so that's called Small Room on the Kemper. But basically it's simulating like a small, sounds like a tile room. It's not that big hall, real echoey sound. That to me is too muddy. It starts to get too muddy when you have too much reverb. But just a little bit like that, mixed with the tremolo, you get a really cool sound. And it sounds very clean, and it was perfect for what I was trying to achieve for this. However, you can do this on an acoustic guitar with no amps and no settings, and it's going to sound awesome. It's going to sound great either way. So the song is in the key of E, and in this first video, we're just going to be focusing on 3 chords, the 1, the 4, and the 5 chord. It's an E chord, there's an A chord, and a B7 chord. 1, 4, 5. So we're going to start off with this. Isn't that beautiful? It sounds so good on its own. And so let me show you how to play it, note for note what I just played, and then I'll show you how to think about it so you can start to just use this when you improvise. But here's what I'm doing. So I'm starting on the 4th fret 3rd string, and then I'm playing the 5th fret 2nd string, then coming up to the 7th fret 2nd string, and then I'm going to slide from the 7th fret to the 9th fret on that 2nd string, and once I get to that point, I'm going to, with my pick, I'm going to come down and hit the open 6th string. Now if you're a fingerstyle player and you don't use a pick, you can just use your thumb to hit that. But that's what I'm doing to start it. So you can see as I slide, I'm picking that 6th string at the same time. You want the effect of both of those happening at the same time. So after that, I'm going to let my finger slide up to the 10th fret and hit that note. So we have, and then I'm going to come back to the 7th fret and do a hammer on to the 9th fret. So all of that's happening on the 2nd string, except for the first note we played. The rest of that has been on the 2nd string. So let's back up from the beginning. We have. Now you notice when I went up to to that 10th fret, I didn't pick it, I just slid into it. These are subtle things, but they really add to the overall effect. And that's what we're trying to do here, is focus on control. You don't want to pick everything because it's going to have a different sound. Yes, the notes will be correct, but a lot of this expressive type of playing is knowing when to slide in, when to do a bend, when to do a vibrato, when to do a pull-off, all these little techniques that you learn. That's what really gives you your sound. So it's not just playing the notes right. That's only half the story. The other half is how you express yourself with your fingers. And everybody's going to have a different sound. All right, so we have, there's the slide up. Now I'm going to come back and I am going to pick here between the 7th and 9th fret. Now watch this. Look at that, how those notes are ringing out. So I love the sound of that. It just sounds so cool to me. So what I'm doing, after I do that hammer on, I'm going to do a quick slide with my index finger from the 8th fret back to the 7th fret on the 2nd string. Ring fingers down on the 9th fret 3rd string. Now that note is going to ring out while my middle finger plays the 9th fret 4th string. Then I come down to the 7th fret 4th string, and then down to the 6th fret 4th string. So listen to this. Hear how that one note is ringing while the others kind of walk down underneath it. It's a subtle little thing there, but it really does enhance your playing. It's a lot different than if you went versus. Okay, so backing up from the beginning, we have. Now, let me talk about where that is coming from so that you can use this. I don't want you to just memorize notes. You're not really learning anything if that's what you're doing. You have to know where this is coming from. So there's several ways you can look at it. There's actually two ways you can look at it. You can think in terms of scales or in terms of chord shapes. And I'm kind of thinking of both. I'm thinking of the E chord using this chord shape. So that's your A chord shape, but I'm playing the E chord up here. And I'm thinking about the major scale that runs through this chord shape. And this will be a big takeaway for a lot of you. Now let me show you how to connect that major scale back to this chord shape. We're not going to necessarily be playing all the notes of the major scale, but I want you to know where it is so that you know where these notes are coming from. So when we look at that chord shape, look at your index finger. It's right there on the 7th fret, 5th string. Then we're going to go up to the 9th fret, 5th string. 6th fret, 4th string. 7th fret, 9th fret on the 4th string. So now we're going to do the 6th fret, 3rd string. 8th fret, 3rd string. 9th fret, 3rd string. So just practice that. You need to know that major scale in relation to this chord shape. It's huge. Now we could keep going. So from here, we're going to play the 7th fret, 2nd string, 9th fret, 2nd string, 10th fret, 2nd string, and then all the way up. We'll just end it there at the 7th fret, 1st string. You can keep working it out if you wanted to. You can do it by ear. It's just do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. But that's what I want you to be able to do, is now take that chord shape and play the major scale through that chord shape. It's a big takeaway because now if I told you to play the major scale in C, you can play the C chord shape. It's the same thing. You're just obviously repositioning it over that chord. And why that's a big deal is now when you're playing rhythm, you've got all these little fill licks that you can work into your playing because you know how they connect to that chord shape. And that's where these notes are coming from. They're just notes in that major scale, so it makes it easy to kind of visualize those. So when I started this, we started down here. Look at this chord shape. There's your E chord, but using a D chord shape. So again, this is why that caged thing is so important. It starts to all make sense. So when I started this, I just played the two notes out of that chord shape. So I was just thinking two chord shapes, this one and this one. They're both E's. Now after that, I came down and went. So I just played the E chord down in first position. Just go ahead and take your hand off the fretboard and you hit that open 6th string, which which will let that E note ring out, and then play the top part of the chord. And I actually did a little hammer on there with my index finger. I can't remember if I put that hammer on in the tablature, but either way it's going to sound good, whether you just strum it or you hammer it on like that. Okay, and then I went to the 4 chord. Isn't that a nice little transition? So that's the open 1 string, ring fingers on the 4th fret 2nd string, and actually you can bump the 1 string as well. Isn't that nice? It's a clash, those 2 notes. And then the open 2nd string, and then I go into the A chord. Now there's a lot of different ways you could do that. You could get very creative with that. You could bend into it, or you could play it that way. So you might want to play around with some different ways to do it. But that's what I'm doing, is I'm just getting from the 1 to the 4 chord. Okay? Now the way that I'm playing that A chord is I'm using all 3 fingers to play on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th string, all in the 2nd fret. That's how I learned to play an A chord, because it allows that open 1 string to ring out. If that isn't important to you, you could always just bar it. You just have to have a little more control that way, and make sure you don't bump the 1 string. You don't want the A6 sound, or maybe you do, I don't know. I think that would be a little bit of a clash there. All right, let me back up from the beginning now. The other thing I should point out is that I'm trying to let these bass strings, the E string and the A string, ring out while I play the melody on top of them. So for example, when I start the E, you can see that 6th string rings underneath that the whole time. I didn't touch it. If I just lightly touched it, it would kill the sound. But keep that in mind. Then when we go to the A chord, try and let that 5th string ring out. So that's the next part we're going to learn. Is I'm going to come up here with my ring finger to the 4th fret 2nd string, and I'm hitting the 4th fret 2nd string and the open 1 string. And then you're going to bend that 4th fret 2nd string to match that note, release it, come down to the 2nd fret 2nd string, and you're always hitting the 1 string with it. And then the 2 notes, the 1st and 2nd string open. And then you can come down and hit the low 6th string. So all together then, this first part goes like this. Right? Really cool. And it's simple. It sounds simple, but it's pretty difficult to let that 5th string ring while you're playing those notes on top of it. I find myself always bumping, and it doesn't take much, just a light touch and it kills the sound. Okay, so now we're back to the 1 chord there. And now the song goes to the 5 chord. So what I'm doing there is I'm just playing a B7 chord. It's actually very simple to play this part. So I'm going to assume you know how to make a B7 chord. Now I add my pinky to the 2nd fret 1st string. That note there. And actually that note is part of the melody. So I'm going to hit that twice, take my pinky off, which is the open 1 string, and then while those notes are ringing out, I'm going to let the pinky come up here and play the 4th fret 2nd string. So it sounds like this all together. And that's kind of a stretch there for your pinky. Depends on how your hand's set up. You're just going to have to kind of play around with that. Now you could take your hand off, but you can see it just sort of kills the vibe a little bit, in my opinion. Okay, and then I went. So that's back to the E chord. Then hitting that 1 string, my pinky comes up here to the 2nd fret 1st string, and and slides all the way up to the 4th fret on the 1st string. Now I'm using my pinky for that. Some of you may want to use your ring finger. It sort of depends on what finger is most comfortable for you there. But the key to that is trying to let that 6th string ring out underneath it. It's all about control. I mean, these are the things that are, when you hear it, you think, well, that's simple. But then when you try and do it, it can be tricky. But this is a great exercise. Once you kind of get comfortable with, letting notes ring out like that, it's just going to make your playing sound that much better. Okay, so let's back up from the beginning now and play up to that point. So I started with the E chord. Then we go back to the B7, and then walked up to that point. Now, so that's the next part we're going to learn. So we're back to that B7 chord, same way we played it before. Pinky's on the 2nd fret, 1st string. It comes off, and then it goes to the 4th fret, 2nd string, and then you go. So you're going to try and do that without bumping other strings. It's as simple as that sounds. I had a really hard time doing that. So you can see just there I hit a wrong string. So it does happen. It's just as many years as I've been playing, I'll still bump strings that I don't want to. So after that 4th fret, 2nd string, I kind of slid down like that and played the open 2nd string, 2nd fret, 4th fret, and then up to the 5th fret 2nd string. And then you can hit the low E string or that 6th string underneath it. Okay, and now we're going to go into the second part, and I'm going to save the second part for the next video, but I do want to show you that transition to get into the second part. So cool. And then down to the A. Now I got that from, I think from Dave Rawlings, who's one of my favorite guitar players, but that is something that he would do. So what I'm doing there is 5th fret 2nd string to the open 1 string. So it's 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, just walk it down. And that note would be in your 7th chord, like your E7 chord. So it's a nice transition. And then to the A chord. I'm going to save the rest of this for the next video. But that's what we're going to work on. We're going to focus on playing this really slow melody and keeping control, not bumping unwanted strings. And it's a really cool little melody. It sounds great on its own. And try it on an acoustic guitar if you have one. I debated on doing this acoustic and went back and forth, and it sounds pretty cool. So let me back up and play through this one more time. I'll go through it slowly, and then I'll see you in part 2 for the rest of this.